This is Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur with your host, Lynn Freest. Lynn will share ideas and expert advice from people that are walking in your shoes and living their encore careers, where they want and at the pace they want. You'll start a company of one with confidence and knowledge to live a fulfilled life of freedom and ease. Lynn is a coach and leadership consultant whose mission is to show senior leaders and experts how to start something refreshing and new after a full career in the corporate environment.
Welcome to this episode of Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur. Thanks for listening. Well, with an encore career, the rewards are better than a cold beer on a hot day. And you can be creating value in the world beyond just winning that next pickleball game. You can work when you want, where you want, and you can do the work you love. So if you're ready to get started today, please contact me at lynn@lynnfreest.com. So this is episode 182, Longevity Lifestyle by Design. And this is a short review of a book by Mike Drak and friends. And I mentioned his book in the last episode, but I thought it deserved going over it a little more detail. Again, he's a really interesting guy. He's, again, done his own encore career. And just read a blog post of his not too long ago where he had gone out and tried to run a Ironman. Didn't quite finish it, but he'd done about 10 months of training. And he said it was probably a pretty aggressive move on his part. And they had a picture on him of looking a little worse for wear as he went through some of it. And some of it wasn't his fault. It just happened. But again, a guy's trying to go forward, and he does some interesting stuff. And we'll look a little bit about his book here. So, as he says, retiring from work is simple, but figuring out what you're going to do with the rest of your life is the hard part. The decision to retire is one of the most important choices you'll ever make, and you don't want to screw this one up because it's going to impact the quality of the next 20 or 30 or more years of your life. So, in the book, he has several different sections. One is talking about what the new retirement is, some secrets to a long and happy and fulfilling retirement, how to design your ideal longevity lifestyle. And then he also finishes up with key perspectives. So it's a variety of people talking about, for example, retirement realities for women, or him describing how I failed at retirement. Some other things, how to map your journey to health and longevity. So again, some great opportunities there to learn from different voices. So one of the things he starts with, and he talks about types of retirees. And one of the types would be comfort-oriented. And these are people who had a long career, and now they're going to enjoy their retirement. Now, some of them are unfulfilled in their life of leisure. So that's a different kind. They think it's going to be great, but all of a sudden, after a while, it's not so much what they're looking for. Now, there are going to be many retirees. They just have to work to make ends meet because probably only 25% or so of the people who retire really have a solid retirement financial foundation. And finally, he talks about the work till you drop retirees. Now, a different way to phrase that is the growth-oriented retirees. These are people, and I would view myself as one, where I'm still interested in doing stuff and participating. So it's one of those things where not ready to just have that comfort-oriented life, I'll say. And then Mike goes on to talk about there's always a big retirement dip. In other words, you've worked hard, you maybe even push forward, you hit that stage, you're going to step away from the corporate career, and then there's a dip. Now, it could also be called a sabbatical if you want to have a more positive spin on it. But it's a period of confusion. I've talked about this earlier in earlier episodes. All of a sudden, your whole life is disrupted from what you've been normally doing on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes, quite frankly, you don't see a path forward in some cases unless you plan for it or you're really actively saying, hey, I'm going to stop, I'm going to take a sabbatical, I'm going to figure this out, and then we're going to move on to do something else. Some people literally get stuck in the dip, and it's not really a fulfilling retirement for them. Then Mike talks about 7 fundamental needs in retirement. Obviously, the first one is survival, safety, and certainty. We all want to know that there's some security. We can never guarantee safety, but we hope there's some certainty. Second one would be Love and connection. Again, one of the key things as far as a long life is do you have connections and love and caring relationships? And it could be with a spouse, obviously, but it could be with other friends or neighbors or family. And then the idea of growth. And this is not just growth in terms of making money. This could be growth in terms of spending more time discovering what your values are, or spending more time working in a food bank. Any number of things could be an area of growth. But then the next piece is interesting. It's called significance, identity, and mattering. Again, this is a piece where maybe our whole job was revolved around that's what made us feel significant. It was our identity, and we mattered. And then all of a sudden, you're retired, and in a sense, no one knows who you are. They don't even care who you are. Nobody calls anymore, you might say. So it's this whole idea, can you recreate your own sense of significance, identity, and mattering outside of what your job used to be? Then number 5 is contribution. Again, people, I think, inherently want to feel they're making a contribution. And again, this is not about money necessarily. It's about finding some way to give back to others, to help others get better, or to just maybe even just teach people, or to express yourself, or any number of things. You could be doing art, for example. And then there's the idea of autonomy and freedom. And some of this ties a little bit back to the survival, safety, and security. If you're with a severe lack of funds, or you're unemployed and you don't know what to do next, it hurts your idea of autonomy and freedom. And some of us get trapped into other things where we felt we didn't have autonomy in our work life. The job dictated what we did. So all of a sudden, it's both a plus and a challenge is to have autonomy and freedom. And then the 7th and final one he talks about is variety. Again, sometimes while we may have gotten comfortable with let's just keep doing things over and over again in our work life, now it's often the case where we'd like to, let's do some different things than maybe we have in the past. So is there an opportunity for you to explore some variety? Now, again, Mike circles back and again talks about different retirees. And as we mentioned earlier, some of them are broke. Literally, they have to work to survive. Some are comfort-oriented. Again, they're going to enjoy the grandkids. They're going to spend time with their wife. They're going to take that college course they never took before. Some are going to be growth-oriented, which again bleeds back into maybe furthering your education, maybe exploring other things. So there's going to be some things that you're going to do to, I'll say, stretch and expand yourself. Then there are angels, and these are the people who are devoted to serving others. And so those are the folks that would, again, not only work in the food bank, but do mission trips, do all kinds of things like that in the support and help for others. And finally, there's some unicorns, and those are the people who start businesses, the silver entrepreneurs, as it are. These are the people who are really going out and doing interesting but unique things as they go forward. After that, Mike circles back or expands on some of the earlier stuff and talks about 6 principles for a long and happy retirement. Again, relationships and community. That's important, just as we mentioned earlier. A healthy lifestyle. I've recently read where probably 80% of our longevity we can influence. We can't control, but we can influence by the lifestyle that we choose to have. And so he talks a fair amount about what's the lifestyle changes you might need to make. Financial security. Again, some of us have gotten that in the past. Maybe we don't have enough, especially as we consider maybe a longer retirement than we've anticipated. But actually, even with part-time work, those kinds of things can really moderate any financial insecurity you might have. The 4th item is spirituality. So this is at the point where we maybe are shifting away, and I mentioned this in the previous podcast, shifting away from being a doer to a beer. What is our connection to some higher purpose or some greater goal, those kinds of things? Number 5 is attitude. Do we have a positive attitude towards growth or a negative attitude? Is this the beginning of a new chapter or is this the beginning of the end? Again, Carol Dweck in her book Mindset really explores that in some depth, but it's how are we looking forward? Is it a positive forward look or is it a negative one? And finally, having a purpose. Whatever we're doing, is there a reason that we feel connected to that? And it's not just someone else's purpose, but it's actually discovering what our purpose is. The next piece is a 9-step model that Mike offers for designing your longevity lifestyle. He starts with an obvious one of educate yourself. What are the possibilities? What are the things that might be possible? Then on to figure out who you are. Where are you now? What are your strengths? What are the things you do today? What are the things you've done successfully in the past? So figure out who you are. And number 3 then is figure out who you want to be. So what's your next reinvention of yourself going to be? He recommends you create vision sketches to test that. And literally, because the mind likes to think in pictures, he says, do these vision sketches or boards. Get pictures of what you hope to be as you move into retirement. Then identify what are the constraints and the lifestyle traps. Again, if we have constraints around where we live or caring for others or even our health, those kinds of things. What are the constraints? And so you just know what it is that might be standing in your way from becoming who you want to be. Then he recommends that if you're just preparing for retirement, test your design prior to launch. So if you want to work remotely or you want to do something in a different part of the country, take some time off while you're still working to go test out some of these things, whether it might be what you want to do or where you want to live, those kinds of things. How do you test those out to see sometimes something you dream about or hope for in the end doesn't turn out to be exactly what you want? The next piece is the idea of creating your weekly schedule. Again, I've talked about this many times in the past, but this idea of now that you can do anything you want, that's both an opportunity and a challenge. So you really have to sit there and say, how am I going to keep myself moving in motion? How do I create my momentum to move into a really useful retirement for me? And he says, even now you want to set goals. And I think, as I said in the previous podcast, you might want to set goals for 10 years and 20 years and even 30 years, because you may be reinventing yourself a couple of times during your retirement. Then the final step, he says, is cost out what you decided you want to do. If this is, you're not retired yet, but preparing, try to understand what it is. And it doesn't mean that if you haven't got all the money you need to do that you have to stop there, but you might have to prepare for part-time work or full-time work or something else to move forward towards the design of what you want to be. Another piece in terms of this looking at a longer-term retirement is he uses this phrase, I believe he got from someone else, but it's you're going to have some go-go years. Those are the ones you're going to be just as healthy and as active as you are probably today. There's going to be the slow-go years. So maybe that's where you're really cutting back to only doing stuff 25% of the time or something like that. And then in the end, there's probably going to be some no-go years where just whether it be your energy or whatever it may be, physical limitations, there will probably be some period of time where you've got limitations on what you can do. Now, I will say they can be shorter and they can be much later in life than you might be anticipating. But recognize that at some point, yeah, I need to be prepared for the fact that either I have poor health or I just not as fast or able to get around as well as I was before. One of his final things, and I've heard this from many other people too, is thinking about your legacy, and basically boils down to writing your own obituary. What would you like to see in your own obituary at the end of your life? And that'll give you some clues as to what you're valuing in today. And it's, on one hand, it's grim. On the other hand, it, I think, really gets you some clarity. But what do you want people to say about you when it's all said and done? So as I mentioned then, there's several chapters. There's 8 different chapters of people who offer their own perspectives on just longevity lifestyle. And I encourage you to check out those that might interest you. So just in a quick recap, we talked about the types of retirees, the fact that there's a big retirement dip, Mike's 7 fundamental needs in retirement, his 6 principles for a long and happy retirement, and his 9-step model for designing your longevity lifestyle. So again, I thank Mike for a wonderful book, and I encourage people to pick it up, and we'll include links to his website because, interestingly enough, he offers the book for free on his website. We'll also have a link to Amazon should you wish to acquire a hard copy. So wrapping up here, with an Encore career, the rewards are great. You can be creating value in the world beyond just winning that next pickleball game. You can work where you want, when you want, and you can do the work you love. So if you're getting ready and you want to get started today, contact me at lynn@litfriest.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.